Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Human Element. Today I'm speaking with Will Glazier, Director of Engineering, Threat Research, and AI/ML at Cequence Security. Will, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Ben. It's great. It's great to be on. Thank you very much for having me. And, I really like the background and topic of this podcast when you reached out. I think this is a cool theme. So excited to talk today.
Yeah, good to have you. It's been a lot of fun so far. So to start off, can you share a bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been at Sequence now. Actually, I just crossed the 10-year mark at Sequence, which feels like an eternity in this space. And the job, I always kind of tell people the job itself has changed on me 4 or 5 times at Sequence as we've gone through different, stages of the journey and the life cycle. And my journey, a lot of that's been along with the company, right? Through different stages of growth, different stages of when it's not all sunshine and rainbows. But a lot of it really began digging into the data of our product when we got our first customers. It was kind of the, journey into the matrix, figure out, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. And so that's one thing. It's probably a point I'll make over and over again on this podcast of like, for people who work in the vendor position, right? Sitting in the vendor chair, like always put yourself in the shoes of your customers. Just like customer comes first, customer comes first. Which sometimes it's hard on the engineering side of the house. Sometimes it's like, you know, those are the uncomfortable conversations, the harder conversations, the more pressure dealing with customers. But man, they are usually right a lot of times. So the journey really started there, and then it grew to we offered like many of our customers, they would purchase not just the product but managed services on top of it, which basically you can think of it functionally as a SOC that has to monitor all their traffic and all their threats. So basically, you got to build that from 0 to 1, then you got to try and scale it, and then you got to make the detections and the logic, the machine learning models, the power of the detections. You got to make those grow and scale as things have changed. And that's what I say. Like the job's changed on me 4 or 5 times because now the Sequence, if you look it up, it's like a bot mitigation, API security, AI security company. And, AI agents are kind of another word for bots, if you really think about it. And so now the world, it's about not just blocking bad bots, but making sure that good bots, agentic bots, are behaving nicely, the right way, doing what's normal. So how do you figure out what's normal? It's part of the challenge. So yeah, that's the journey, long and winding, I guess. But have been lucky to work with some very nice, impressive, very helpful people, both my senior and my junior over the time, which ultimately that's the most exciting part.
Makes the long tenure worth it. Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you tell us about some key life events that have shaped your leadership style?
Key life events that have shaped my leadership style. So I would say I love sports. That's like a thing, a passion of mine in my life growing up. Played football and baseball a lot growing up and had some very impactful coaches during that time. And so a lot of like those events, I feel like it just gets burned into your memory, your psyche a little bit and shapes like how you approach problems in the future. And there's kind of there's one saying and an old coach always used to say when you'd like be faced with, maybe in the sports world, it's like you're facing an opponent that's better than you. So you're like a big underdog. But in the cybersecurity world, it might be more of like you're kind of at an adversarial disadvantage. You've got very little amount of data. You feel like you're dealing with someone who's much more of an expert than you are at a particular thing. It's a new problem, a deep problem. And the expression he always used to say was like, everyone puts their pants on the same way, one leg at a time. And that's like, if I could summarize basically everything I believe in one sentence, it would be that. And so it gives you an internal like sense of a little bit of fearlessness with which you have to approach the thing, but also humility, knowing that you're not like, again, because even then, if you think that you're better than someone else, you still put your pants on the same way, one leg at a time. And that's how I approach like my team with leadership on my team. Because again, we built that SOC from nothing to something. And now more and more and more of SOC work is being AIified, agentified, as much as you can automate as possible. And as more and more we work on that, you'll lose the plot if you don't stay grounded and touch grass and still, like I'm still in the on-call rotation with all my team, even parts, even though like, technically I'm their boss. It doesn't matter because we all got to touch grass, basically. Everyone's got to it's that same mantra. So a lot of those sports lessons in various things. That one in particular, I'd say, is the most interesting. The others are more on the cliche side of like, resiliency and mental toughness and blah, 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 which no one wants to hear all that over and over again. And it's a different reality. But I really think the like staying humble in the face of complicated problems, but also knowing that other people have the same, we're all human. Like, I don't know if some people, yeah, when you get years and decades of expertise, you obviously know more than someone else, but things change so fast that
That may not help you.
yeah, exactly. They just may not. Yeah. And things even the playing field in various stages. It's a lot. The last 2 or 3 years have been a big, you know, that's been a tectonic shift in like how certain things that used to be a long pole for, work and a down payment on skills unit used to need to have been shifted a little bit with some of these AI tools. But you got to know those, you have to have struggled through a few of those, you know, problems to know that you're not getting diluted by, you're not getting hallucinated to by the model or being told the wrong thing. It's tricky.
How do you know the answer it gave you is rational if you don't understand the basis of the tech?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And that was one of those things I think I had when I thought back to like how, because I'm also my background from an education standpoint is quite non-computer science technical, which is a little bit interesting. And again, why like my journey, it's hard for me to try to, I feel bad when talking to like younger folks and junior folks. I'm like, what lessons can you learn? How can you help me do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, man, there's nothing repeatable you can learn from my path. Some of it's so lucky. You get like luck pays a large portion of
Luck is a functional is a component here. Yeah.
yeah. And so I feel bad, trying to draw connections that may not exist, but never shut like, buying O'Reilly books on networking and reading them. Like it seems like it seems like you know, a concept from history. It seems quaint, like, and I'll just never forget like how some of just like basic TCP IP networking books and those concepts keep coming, the things keep coming back over and over and over again. That's a function of where our product sits and what kind of data we work on largely. But I don't know. It seems to rear its head as useful time and time again, even with problems that I'm less experienced with. Like, for example, I mean, you being, Maltego, having more of a malware background. I'm not an expert in that land very much at all.
I came up as a network engineer, so I'm with you. We're on the same page. So you talked about coaches. Are there individuals kind of later in your career who had big impacts on your path?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's been so many people like at Sequence itself. I mean, and many of the, it's one thing that's been interesting about Sequence, many of the folks who were there when I started, when we were small, 6 of us at that time, many of them are still there, which is very interesting, powerful. You build good relationships and connections, but they really helped me at that young age. And so like, you can honestly just go on if you go on LinkedIn and look at some of the ones who've been there a while, it's all of them. Maya and Trans are 2 of the founders, but there were folks who were there beforehand. Like David Wiseman was one at the beginning of the company is his name, who got me started down the like threat intel specific path of like that, basically there's the data that we're ingesting and the determinations we have to make about the nature of the traffic. And there is the, shall we say, using math and large data sets to try to build some flavor of IP reputation database that can help you in the context of this when presented with the oil slash gasoline for the fire, which is residential proxy services, which power a lot of the bot attacks that we see. So he basically like got me down that wormhole at a very young age when I had no business going down that wormhole. And him, and there's a gentleman named Mayank Demon, who was one of my peers at the time. Well, peers being generous because he's way smarter than I am. And so he taught me a ton of things, but we worked together early days at this company. Both of them have since gone on to like do bigger and better things at other places. And those folks were instrumental, you know, in the early days of my career. And then there've been a few folks who have, it's not only mentors or like people my senior who have helped and taught me things in my career, like folks on my team who currently work for me contribute. Like they don't even know how much they end up teaching me. It's not a one-way street, basically. And a few gentlemen who've, boomeranged from, they were early heavy sequence power users and, at customers of ours. And then when they left to different opportunities, they boomeranged back, and we had built a relationship working together where like they were responsible for tuning detections and rules at the customer side. I was helping them from the sequence side. So you built a relationship and trust and like a manner of working together that, maybe, and they all come with, I guess, a few of the folks in my mind of there's various levels of seniority experience, but the array of their experience is quite interesting as well. Folks who, are like the best engineer on the team, but again, didn't necessarily go to a powerhouse CS school. Then there's folks who have a degree from art school, and it's like that. It's like that somehow has unlocked this visual part of your brain that allows you to see the forest through the trees, of specifically when it comes to the SOC, of how we're going to architect a lot of these workflows and build out like, because it's not writing the code in that place is kind of the easier part. It's more about what are we going to do in all of these circumstances? How are we going to integrate these different tools? How's that logic going to play out? And then also knowing if you're good visually, you understand what it's like to be in the customer's shoes again, which that theme comes up again and again and again, is just be like your users, and that'll generally lead you the right way.
Excellent. So is there a non-technical skill that has had significant impact on what you do?
Yeah, it's funny. Like it sounds almost non-technical because it's like so long ago and almost irrelevant to our job. But it's like, I'm just thinking back to like my high school math and how good those math teachers were. Like, and this is it, so shout out to the Pally math department and Arnie Lim and Kathy Bowers if they hear this podcast. But like, it was this foundation that served me so well, so randomly in the future with a lot of like, as it would relate to just Bayesian statistics and things that they get called machine learning in the cultural vernacular, and in like when you're engaging from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective with customers, but it's really just stats on steroids and math and anomaly detection. And so that's huge. But again, I guess that is kind of quasi-technical. The other is, I guess you would call it like presentation skills or just like communication skill, being able to reduce a lot of information and data into like maybe a story or like lead someone along this. A lot of times, basically, we get called in to explain why Sequence thinks something is malicious, or like, it's like, here's this detection, here's how it worked, here's what we blocked, and here's how it ended up. And you have to basically tell a story if you kind of distill it down. And so storytelling, I don't have a drama background or like acting school or anything like that. It just seems to be the way my brain works. And then if you just practice it a lot, you practice it. It's basically how every time I'm presented with a situation like that, I'm thinking to myself, how can I recount to the customer chronologically, like this is what when we looked at this first, and this is what it's seeing. And now here's the next piece that here's the next anomaly that we spot. We're looking at this data. Oh, do you see this? Do you see that? Kind of walking them through it in almost story form seems to help a lot. And that just, this is a sidebar, I guess, but like, man, the importance of reporting in this field is immense. I've been spending a lot of time on that recently with one of my colleagues. But yeah, you have to be able to convey a lot of information in a small enough digestible form.
Why don't you tell us about a mistake that led to personal growth?
There's been too many. I guess I would say, and it's less like one mistake that I can really think of, and it's more these flashes of various instances when it happens, but like staying calm, not letting emotions get the best of you in circumstances where you're frustrated or where someone's pissed you off or where, someone has called you out on something. Like there's a tough balance to strike where if you are a total corporate droid, no one will trust you or believe in you and listen to you. You know what I mean? If you silence all emotion, it becomes very hard to connect and motivate people. But at the same time, learning when you are speaking with your emotions rather than with some data and logic is a lesson that I think, I can think of examples where I've run into that over the past and hopefully learned from,
Speaking of lessons learned, what's the most valuable lesson learned from a security incident?
Man, write everything down. Write, and write again. I like so many things in the heat of the moment can be forgotten if you're not, auditing them, tracking them, writing things down so that you can learn from a future reoccurrence of the same behavior pattern or the same, it's one thing to talk in theory about like we're going to have this knowledge base that's going to have examples of past incidents and what has happened to them and playbooks and run books and this that, like it's one thing to have it in theory and it's another to actually use it like when things are happening. And so the folks who I tend to believe and see from my experience, the folks who are better at writing things down tend to not repeat the same mistakes. So like in those incidents, it's like I'm basically talking about times where it's like there was an attack of certain behavior where maybe we missed a lot of it, a good portion of it, and there was an alert that it just didn't fire or something like that, or maybe actually even more so, not that it happens more often, but more impactful, shall we say, is when there are false positives and for software like ours, because we're in line of the traffic, when we end up blocking humans and catching humans up in the loop. And then you have to answer to the execs on why that happened. And having data and annotations and notes to like justify all of your decisions is like beyond essential in those moments. Because if you have it and you're transparent with them and you say, this is what happened and this is where we went, this is the path we went down, these are the decision points that made our decision, you actually can turn painful conversations into opportunities to build a relationship and trust. Like those have been, it's sick and twisted in the sense that you never want to cause issues ever. And there are times if there, you can, I guess you could call it unlucky, but it's not, sometimes it's deserved. Like there are sometimes if you cause an incident like that, you're done. It's you don't get two strikes. There's one strike and you're out. But there are some times where those experiences allow people to learn about how the sausage is made, what actually goes on under the hood. And so I'd say, yeah, the thing I've learned the most is the importance of writing those things down. And in the last year, it's interesting where like some of the AI tooling that the world is investing in and using can be so powerful for some of this. Something sounds so silly as like Slack huddles. I think their AI transcription is really good. And we use it all the time now for like our Monday morning, just like retro of tickets from the past week that got to a certain level. And we record it in the Slack huddle because it's so, I don't know, it just distills things down and summarizes them well. But then you see the dark side of AI slop and writing that's just like full of emojis, has a lot of words to say nothing. And then people stop paying attention to any of it. And so it's like a kind of a big time like word of caution as well, of like if you just use the AI tools to do all the writing for you, you're screwed. You'll lose your voice, you'll lose clarity. And yeah, I don't think anyone has an answer to that right now. That's a challenge for, I'm sure everyone's kind of dealing with the same.
So actually, there's a fascinating conference presentation around something called second stories. The idea that there's the flow of the event, and then you take a step back and look at it based on what the people involved knew at the time. Basically, the guy breaks down 3 Mile Island, the disaster there, and he talks it through once, and you're sitting there going, "Why would they do that? What were they thinking?" But then the second time through, it's actually like, "Here's what they knew when," and you're like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense."
Oh, so they read it back. You're actually literally you're telling the story again with that background when you do it the second time.
Right, right, right. Looking at what they knew when they made the decisions they made versus what was happening when they made the decisions they made. It's a fascinating breakdown there.
All right. I just learned something new today and something to bring into that's a good idea to try out.
What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of your job?
When concepts click and folks get it and they produce, like it's like when you're kind of teaching someone through something, coaching someone through this. Actually literally just happened this morning. Someone he's actually the newest person on my team and just started literally 2 weeks ago. And so he's drinking from the fire hose and he sent me a bunch of these thoughts of like, he found something and he questioned himself. And then he used some of the ML tooling that we have in our SOC, and he found some results. And then he questioned those results because those results were actually telling him something that it just didn't match. He's understanding the system, but questioning things at the right point in time, ultimately like leading to the right result, which was like, oh, hey, yeah, this actually is a threat, and we need to like deploy this policy and click this button, and boom, there we go. And he's 2 weeks into the job. So it's like those things are very rewarding. And those are not, I have to be on it. Like that is not just me as a leader on the team doing that. That's actually the team that created the structure and the culture with which someone could do that. It actually has very little to do with any coaching or anything that I did for that individual. And that is actually harder. It was harder to get to that stage. Many of the folks who are still with me on my team will remember the old days and the before times where you did not have, before you built that system, it's more of like chickens running around with their heads cut off, and you get people doing things subtly different ways because people's brains work differently, which is good actually in the aggregate. And so when newer folks are able to feel like they're learning a lot from others, that's very rewarding. And just emphasizing that it's not, I don't think about any individual in a leadership role. It's about if you can make a hive mind of a team that's willing to help each other, that'll actually speed run it much faster than having to spend a lot of time coaching one-on-one.
How has your approach to building trust within teams evolved over time?
Evolved. It's not I guess this would be a journey. This is less of a linear journey of like from point A to point B, and more of like a dial on a spectrum that goes back and forth over time. I think you have to, well, there's one point I made earlier of like, you still got to touch grass and be connected to the work that your guys and girls have to do every day. If you detach yourself and disconnect yourself, you can lose trust very quickly, because you may say something that's just objectively false or not based in reality, and everyone looks at you sideways and says you not, but they feel like because there's a hierarchical relationship, they can't call you out on it, like by default. Now, it's great when you have people who do. I relish and cherish people who do call me out on anything if they feel like that. But I find it important to explain a little bit. You don't have to explain too much. Sometimes the answer is, because I'm your boss and I told you so, so do it. But then you just need to trust me on this. But sometimes it's great to, like, if you say, here's exactly why we need to do this, boom, 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 3 bullet points. Like, we've got to do this first so that we can do that. Like, it's important that we get this, that we work on this detection of this feature, or it's like something that's actually not even related to any of the core work of like detections or the actual algorithms we're using. It's more about reporting. And it's like, we got to work on this thing because perception is reality. And if we don't stop these problems, we'll never get time to work on this. And you've got to do it. If you explain that background, I tend to find people trust you a lot more. They'll jump into it head first. But there's always, again, like nuance. You don't need to share everything and air all dirty laundry of like, here's and you don't want to fall into a situation where you feel like you have to justify yourself to everyone every time you make a decision. There's a level of trust that works both ways, where then sometimes if you get in a habit of having good reasons and explaining them most of the time, then when you have less data to back things up, it's more of a hunch or more of a like gut feeling, or a situation that deserves discretion. I don't know. You can tell people, I need you to do this. Please do.
What is your strategy for balancing the need for technical expertise with leadership skills?
Yeah, sorry for a cliche answer, but like hiring people smarter than me, literally. That's it. I mean, that's like, yeah, that's the only way I could. Because again, that's where I think to myself, like, I don't think I'm the smartest engineer in the room by any stretch of the imagination. I appreciate different perspectives on a team. I mentioned, you know, arrays from the no formal CS background to like art school degree, like those brains coming together work better on a whole. But it's hard to go through the credentialing, like the reality of the world and the credentials that you need to get in this world makes it really hard. Finding those people is maybe not a sustainable, scalable solution. It seems again like luck plays a role. And how did you meet them? Who were you connected to that you got introduced to this? Oh, we actually met through at a conference or at one of our, oh, we through someone who I worked with at this customer, blah, blah, blah. So how do I, yeah, how do I, it's really like trying to achieve some balance on the team and hire people who are smarter than I guess is really the simplest way to answer that.
Former boss of mine, he used to be fond of saying, and probably still is, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a better room.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, you got to keep stretching, use it or lose it from the muscle, mental muscle, physical muscle, all of the above. It's like, it's a good saying.
What is your definition of success for the team?
That one's a very hard question because as the world changes, the definition of success changes. You know what I mean? Like what we're shooting for changes. It's also topical because it's holidays, and I was just kind of like having to write down all my thoughts for the next quarter, like the next 3 months. What are we looking at? What's success? But those things, those like 1 to 3 to 6 month like roadmaps, those are ephemeral successes. Those are benchmarks, and so in a sense, they can change and they can be fleeting. My definition of success that I think is sustainable, scalable long term is have a team culture where everyone is making each other better. That's like number one, at dealing with incidents, growing skills they didn't have. Like that's an interesting thing about my team. There's two parts. There's really like security engineer group, machine learning engineer group. The guy who runs the machine learning group is again like talk about way smarter than he is. And like, but these guys will teach each other concepts across they'll spend a lot of time, they become friends outside of work while working to each other, just learning new concepts to the point where one of the security engineering guys was able to deploy his own model from nuts to bolts, start to finish, like all the way, the kind of thing that you're never expecting to do going into that job. So definition number one is that a team culture that can do that. Number two is all about value for the customers. That's it. It's like we got to just put ourselves in the customer's shoes. What features, when we are you got to kind of know the goal, which is we need to stop malicious bot traffic at our customers, or in the case of the AI agent stuff, stop, it's still malicious bot traffic, an agent gone rogue. And you basically need to just gut check yourself as often as possible on statistics. How many events are we catching? How many are we missing? What can we do better? And how can we, the same thing I was talking about with our team of like making each other better. We got to help try to do that for the customers too. Nobody wants, like our customers are really smart too. You got to empower them sometimes with the same tools that you use to help make your life better. And that through line of success relies on knowing what your customers are really using your product for or what they're doing and where you can help them. And so that relies on continuing to have a good back and forth relationship.
Is there a daily routine that you've found especially helpful?
Ask my wife and she'll tell you I'm like the worst planner on the face of planet Earth. So daily routine is a tricky question. I know, especially in the sense of like, and a lot of folks who probably yourself and folks you talk to, like this industry and this vertical specifically, especially when you're doing like blue team SOC related work, doesn't lend itself well to predictable work hours all of the time. And if things you can count on, the only thing you can count on is the bots don't sleep. So it's less about, oh, at this time I'm going to do X, and it's more about like, I need to, make sure I exercise, not just from a body perspective, but from a mind perspective, like get on the bike and just pedal hard until till you get in the zone, that kind of thing. And then go, yeah, the exercising is huge. It's like I can tell when I haven't exercised I can tell when I've fallen off the wagon. Just like I can tell when I just got back from 3 days in Buffalo and ate a bunch of chicken wings and nasty things. You're like, it actually affects your brain substantially. You have a shortened attention span. You feel fidgety in your seat, short temper, like all of those things. So that the daily routine exercise is huge. And then as far as in the work, while my butt's in the chair, is heavily using every calendar app has one of these features, I'm sure, but like Microsoft, it'll go hunt for breaks in your calendar and go block them off. And then, focus time, actually take the focus time, dive into it, like silence your Slack during a portion of that so that you're trying to get into a mental flow state for whatever work you're trying to do. Like protecting your brain's ability to do that is essential, especially in this AI enabled world where, and short form social media video world, et cetera, where it's like, it seems like the entire world is trying to hijack our attention span.
Running for minimum attention. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like you actually have to work at that like it is a muscle, with respect to the physical world of exercise. So my daily routine as far as, on this day I do this or that day I do that is very much useless. And I am the world's worst planner. I will vouch for my wife on that. But yeah, those two concepts of like the mind body relationship, and then also the being able to make sure your brain can still stretch it out and think for an hour uninterrupted is important.
Absolutely. So is there any one thing that you do as a leader that you'd like to see more leaders doing?
That's a good question. It's tough to answer without sounding arrogant in my own right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I do this, and I'd love everyone. And it also implies if I'm answering it, whatever answer I give implies that I don't see people doing it, and that's not necessarily true. Dog food, your product. There was that legendary, I mean, legendary is putting it strongly. I remember when the Uber CEO, who's now the Uber CEO, became the Uber CEO, and he talked about going on the car, like driving for Uber. I think the DoorDash CEO did it too. It shows up in whatever news coverage they get. That's it. I think it just begins and ends with stuff like that. You can't lose touch with your customers and what they use your product for. You absolutely can't. If you do, it's just going to be a long, drawn out, you know, downward descent. I think that's what it all boils down to. And that's not to say that people don't do. You know what I'm saying. It's not like that's a unique insight from me.
You're not asserting anyone doesn't specifically do it. It's just something people should definitely do.
Yeah, and that's no sage advice either, because people have said that before. But I don't know. I've come to really believe that over the years, watching how powerful that is.
So how do you know when you've got an effective team culture, and how do you build it?
That story I was telling earlier about how, like, it's almost like when new people join or new situations present themselves, you get a chance to gut check the health of your culture, how quickly people can get on board, of how much others help them in their journey, and that's a great one. That doesn't happen every day. So outside of that, there's a soft signal that happens every once in a while. I think it's just what's the balance of contribution like in meetings and in sync ups and in like that's actually kind of like a soft signal you can always tell over time. Like if meetings are getting dominated by one or two people, if some of the people who are really good contributors who do a lot of work, who are great folks, if they stop contributing, if they start talking less, you need to worry more from a leadership perspective. If you feel like people aren't being forthcoming with you, if you have a relationship with someone that's generally based on like not being afraid to trade ideas and like, actually, I disagree with you here, I disagree with you here, what about this, what about that, and then that stops, that's another red flag. And how do you build it? It's relying on, again, having some North Star that you've got to like keep. People have to know some goal they're working towards, some broad vision, but it doesn't have to be this like elegantly spelled out, here's our roadmap for the next 12 months, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, like this giant Jira matrix of things we're going to do. It's like, figure out what people are good at and what excites them, and let them do that as much as possible. And it becomes a little bit of a positive feedback loop where then they can teach others who don't know that thing on the team. And in this case, I'm thinking of this. The story that's coming to my mind is one of the engineers on my team who's just extremely good at building things from scratch. And I mentioned how important writing things down is in incidents, and how much I used to hate when things would get buried in Slack and never seen again. And so he just built an incident management tool that we use, where it's just, you know what, we're just going to go fork this this repo of an IAM tool, and it's going to be heavily integrated with Slack to get around this problem, right? Of people leaving things in the void, and also that being where people need to get people's attention to start investigations and other obviously richer like tools for in Grafana, for example. But when those opportunities pop up and someone who's passionate about a thing goes and does a thing, and you can like let them rip on that, it's helpful even if it is not according to plan. It's not exactly what you budgeted in the roadmap. And so that's one, I guess, thing that I've learned over time, where it's to not stay too rigid to a plan, because it can actually harm you from building a culture where people will course correct you. As the leader, you can be wrong, and you definitely can. And then if they course correct you, there can be these flywheel effects of awesome things that happen that you never would have expected. And they provide positive outcomes that you can't predict necessarily. And so that, yeah, I found if you let people have, I guess maybe the best analogy I can draw is like, I know it was kind of the legend of, the legend of Google, where it's the 20% free time where you get to work on passion projects. And, maybe it's not that wide of a scope and that much time per se, depending on your enterprise and what reality you're bounded by. But protecting a little bit of space for that, I found, has a positive impact on culture.
Absolutely. What advice do you most often give new folks in the field?
Dig into the data and pretend you're the customer. Like again, like start with the product. If that's this is kind of myopic to the vendor side of the house. I understand from the perspective that's topical in my mind. Be one with your customer. Go through using the product exactly as they would. Talk to them, learn from them, and don't be afraid to pull on a thread and see where it takes you, even if it doesn't seem directly related to whatever task is at hand. That pulling on that thread is, when I was telling you kind of just about the early days of my journey in my career, like pulling on that thread is actually what got me lucky and got some of the discoveries that got me going down the path. So,
Pick some good threads, building that intuition about which thread to pull.
and half the time the thread ends 10 steps in, and you got to back it up and you got to go. And then but I don't know, the simple ability, the simple fact of doing that is in and of itself a brain stretch that I'm talking about in AI land. We're short circuiting our brains too often. And if you can actually just follow a thread long enough, I mean, you know, I know that memory and context windows are instrumental for the foundation model providers and the tools like Claude and, and ChatGPT that people use. And so if you think about it from a human perspective, your ability to hold all of those concurrent thoughts in your head and goes 10 steps down the rabbit hole and then come back 3 of them, like, I guess that's an advantage against our AI overlords for now. I'm sure it'll, yeah, for the moment. So that's, I guess, advice I would give is don't be afraid of that, of doing that. Don't think that you have to stop doing that because it's not immediately the thing your boss asked for.
And it's not automatically a waste of time.
It's not automatically a waste of time.
You never know until later.
Yeah, and then obviously there's like the obligatory, I guess these feel cliche too, but like obviously like building relationships and networking is important, and you never know. And we all like pointing one finger out, you point 4 back at yourself, right? What's that saying? Like I feel this on like there are days, especially you always feel this way in the holiday season too, because things slow down a little, and you talk to friends and family, and you're like, oh my God, I need to be in touch with these people more often. But like, listen to, act on that instead of just think about it is what I would say to others and to myself.
What's your approach to mentoring the next generation?
Oh, well, that's talk about another question where they answer, A, it's hard in the first place, and B, it's changed so much in 2 or 3 years. Like, I really sympathize with folks battling it out in entry level job market land with some of these are secular trends as far as hiring and interest rates and investment and that and all that. And then some of these are, shall we say, hopes of interested parties that, AI is actually going to be good enough to replace all of these people who can do all these things. And it's like, it's not. But if you don't think, then like, yes, you might like, yeah. And if you don't think, you are at risk of getting replaced by, if you're behaving like a bot, the bots will replace you. And so, like, trying to encourage critical thinking is maybe is maybe at the core of the thread of like how I approach mentorship is like get them to question things and think hard and not behave like a bot chasing tickets and chasing alerts and things. And then everything else I think is more of like, if I I have this, there was this saying an old coach of mine used to say, like, he's used to say, motivate yourself, inspire others by like, just like think about like do your job and like keep your own. If I actually do everything I'm kind of saying and talking about on this podcast and I stay disciplined, then others will see it with the actions, which are in and of itself more useful for mentorship than any conversations you may have. The conversation is just a little bit, the action and what you do over time is a larger portion of it. And so as a leader, you got to know basically like when to shut up and when to just do certain things, knowing that the other person will see that. You will teach them through those actions, basically.
Okay. Are there any books, podcasts, other resources that you tend to recommend?
I read every Krebs article that comes out. I love, I love those. And I love that he's on the warpath about the, he's fallen down the residential proxy wormhole a little bit recently, which makes me happy. Cause that's my favorite wormhole to go down. And so I always read those books. I had mentioned some of those, like, you textbooky style networking books. Oh, I loved this one was a good one from early to the Cuckoo's Egg, I believe. You know what? If I could say singular favorite, it would be that one because of the nature of the story, how it is told. It is told as a story. It gives these examples of going down the wormhole and finding based off of this subtle, what was it at the beginning? It was a 1 second,
14-cent discrepancy, something stupid like that?
14 cent. That's what it was. A 14-cent discrepancy in accounting software, which like these days, oh my God, would you gloss over that? Like,
Oh, yeah. Rounding error.
yeah. And so that, if I could pick the one book, I would say read that, read that.
On your way up the ladder, what was the hardest transition you faced?
I kind of like when I'm venting on my office, it's never the bots, it's the people. It's not the bots, it's doing with the people. It is trying to managing growth, like companies moving from one stage to another in their growth is very hard. It's like very hard. And integrating people who have different experiences and different backgrounds and level of big company process, small company agility, getting the balance there right has been one of the things I found most insightful, learned the most about. It's an experience that is very hard. Like, it's one of those experiences where it's like, how else do you learn other than by doing this? I don't know. I would, how do you don't read about this in a case study and you don't like, you can't think your way through it. So managing how to serve many masters, which is like your customer being maybe the king one, but like other teams who have a specific job to do it. It's like, oh yeah, if we could just do this, we could help them a lot. But also then helping to avoiding becoming a crutch is it's delicate because it's not accusing someone else of not doing their job per se. It's just like, no, like now we've done this a few times. You got it. Go do it. Like go forth and prosper. You can do this. You've learned enough. Like go get them. That kind of thing that's been the hardest thing to, and yeah, again, I guess with most of my answers, I have no sage advice on that one. I don't think other than, yeah, just keep trying. Like some of the principles that you can ground yourself in, like try to live to those and just keep grinding.
I wouldn't sell yourself too short. You got some good stuff here.
Yeah.
So when you're hiring for your team, what qualities are critical to you and how do you screen for them?
Mental agility is probably like the if I could distill it down, because again, it's not I would be hypocritical if I was a big credentialist, and I've seen plenty of amazing results from folks from an array of backgrounds. So it's all about like how fast they can think on their feet and question things, and just when presented with new information, do they change their mind? Is probably an interesting one. And so sometimes the way I test for that can vary tremendous. I can do like not like lead code exercises per se, but it's like I can do more publicly available examples. Sometimes for interviews, I'll actually just go straight into our product and like take them through a story, like two diametrically opposed pieces of information. I'll take them down a wormhole a little bit and be like, all right, we're going to go hunt for this type of event. Like, maybe there's a credential stuffing event going on here and you're going to go find this, or maybe like they're after some loyalty rewards points or whatever it is, doesn't matter. And then you are showing them competing information, which suggests that maybe this is a legitimate set of this is actually allowed automated traffic. Like in the financial world, you get the aggregators, of like Quicken and, and all of that. How, when presented with the new information, how much are they are they like trying to slam the old assumption into the, like, are they trying to finish that old assumption and find something that proves it? Or are they willing to step back and be like, you know what? I don't know. This seems opposite of that. And then when they say, it's like, boom, if they're able to step all the way back and say, yeah, it's actually the opposite, that's a indicator for me of someone with a brain that's willing to question all of the things all the way back and not get too hung up. It's very hard. I think it's really insightful and interesting when I do it with people. It's very circumstantial in the sense that like I myself can fail that test many times. And like it's almost, there's an element of luck and timing to like when you're talking to a person, if they fail or succeed that test. So you got to kind of, if I'm interviewing, slash doing tests, the like kind of, there's the talking part of interviewing and then there's the like technical rigor part of interviewing. And you got to kind of try to throw that wrinkle in a few different places to see how they adapt.
Are you tracking any developing trends in the space that are going to change how we lead our teams?
Probably not tracking anything that isn't already tracked by the S&P, the Magnificent Seven stocks, right? Like AI line goes up. I think those trends are so powerful that they are going to impact how we lead our teams, period. Like it's going to impact the amount of resources we get on our teams. It's going to impact how we communicate between each other. Like if people start pumping out the AI, you can just tell when someone writes a big long message summary with with the kinds of emojis that you would never find unless you went like deep into the emoji archive. And I'm like, that is not that emoji. You did not even know that emoji existed. Therefore, this is generated by AI. Like those things I I love, don't get me wrong, I love AI as a tool. I love it. I use it all the time. It allows me to do things I never would have been able to do. But man, if we outsource the critical thinking parts of it, it is going to be a problem. And I don't and then even worse from like a team leadership perspective, where like if your team leader starts generating, if everything you see written from person who's in charge is AI slop, how does that, there's like a soft impact to morale that's going to happen to the folks who work for you. They're going to be like, are you kidding me, man? You couldn't put effort into that. You couldn't do that. You couldn't see us and for me and who we are. Like, so I don't know. I think knowing how far is too far, I think is probably, yeah, is that a trend I'm tracking? Not necessarily, but it's something that's always in my mind.
All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for today. Before we wrap it up, if people want to follow along with your work, is there somewhere they can go?
Yeah, I mean, the obligatory all the socials, but I guess right now I would say specifically with the work and things we're focused on, our sequence, like the especially now and coming up into the new year, I've been weaving in like residential proxy, this, that, the other thing. The some of the content we're going to be publishing coming up in the next few months, I'd say, even if it's not like me on the byline, again, it'll be those better inspire engineers on my team on the byline who a lot of we're going to be working together on a lot of those things. So I would follow along with what our company's doing, because I'm also nowhere near as good or prolific as I should be about publishing on like my own website or on LinkedIn and this, that, the other thing. I'm bad at those. So if I could leave anyone with one word of advice is don't do what I do on that front, because I'm not good at it. But yeah.
All right. Awesome. It's been a great conversation. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.